And good afternoon and welcome to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. This is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, the pastor of the Freedom's Way Baptist Church right here in Santa Clarita. Just celebrated 21 years last Sunday, thanks to those of you who came out and celebrated with us, including, of course, Jerry and Carl Goldman and others who came to just say, hey, thanks for sticking around for 21 years here in the loony state of California. Obviously, we are here again, and it's raining, it's snowing, it's doing all kinds of things here in California. Last Wednesday, it was doing basically the same thing. We're not used to this here in Southern California, but in many ways, it's kind of a good reprieve, considering that all we've heard for the last 5 years is nothing but drought. But we should be seeing a wonderful spring here popping up, green grass, flowers, and all the like here in the next couple of weeks. We just need the rain to stop. Today on our show, we do not have Suzette Valladares calling in. No, we have her in studio. And I just found out that she's a neighbor up where I live. And so today, former California State Assemblywoman from what was the 38th District. She was elected back in November of 2020, which of course was a year that we all want to forget in many ways, right? But after her district was redrawn into the newly 40th, she lost by the narrowest of margins to Pilar, some 50.2% to 49.8%. But Suzette, thank you for coming on to Politics in the Pulpit today. Say hello to the folks out there.
Why, first of all, thank you so much, Pastor Cook, for having me, for having this show to really blend two things I think that people are often afraid to talk about.
They are.
Politics and religion. A long time ago, I had an idea for politics and wine, just so you can get a little more truthsome out of there. I don't know if we could add politics, wine, and religion. That might make a real... I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Excited to be here. It's been a while since we last connected in person.
Sure.
In the flesh here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Excited about what we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. So let me ask you a question. What does a former state assemblywoman do now? Now that she's not in the assembly, what does Suzette do?
So I was really blessed to have been asked by a great organization in the San Fernando Valley who was in need of some nonprofit leadership to come on board. Pretty much they wouldn't take no for an answer. So the organization is called the LAPD Devonshire PALS, so Police Activity League.
Okay.
And it's really a really amazing organization that blends two of my passions. One, youth, and particularly underserved youth, and providing them with opportunities.
Sure.
With law enforcement. So
Great.
We are a youth center that partners with LAPD. And really our officers, we have 5 officers that are assigned to our youth center that work with and mentor our youth, our at-risk youth. Mm-hmm. So really unique opportunity to blend my two passions, but at a really important time, I think, in history, because we have these really high tensions when it comes, and criticism of the law enforcement community and their relationship with underserved communities.
Yeah.
So this blends those two, and I actually think bridges that gap that so many people talk about.
Sure.
And so really excited to be their new executive director.
Oh, wonderful. And so if somebody wanted to help out or give charitably or whatever, how would they get a hold of that organization?
They can go to our... Great question. He's done this before.
Wow.
So you can go to our website, which is Devonshire PALS, just .org. You can Google us online too. Really phenomenal organization. And it's a completely free program. So if you think of like the Boys and Girls Club, you think of the YMCA, these kids that we're serving, their median income is for their households is less than $45,000 a year. And we know the price of eggs, the price of gas, the prices, everything is through the roof. So this is really helping kids to have an after school program where they can learn new things. They can escape, a gang life. Really, we're in an area in the San Fernando Valley where the neighborhoods are not safe. I mean, since I've been there, there's been homeless fires, there's been a stabbing, there's been a shooting. It's not the best of areas, and we really are a sanctuary for these kids. So please go to our website and donate. Absolutely.
That sounds great. Now, let me ask you a question, Suzette. Obviously, as we mentioned at the outset, you lost by the narrowest of margins, 50.2% to 49.8%. At least that was the latest figures that I saw. Tell us a little bit, without necessarily throwing her under the bus, a little bit of Pilar Chiavo and the person who ended up assuming your seat?
Well, I will tell you a little bit about my race and, how close it was. And I frankly don't really know the Assemblywoman very well.
Yeah,
but
nobody that I know up here knows her either. But
But, I can tell you what I hope for her, because I'm somebody who is an eternal optimist. And even if I don't agree with you, and even if I drastically disagree with your positions, for the sake of our community, I really hope that she does well and serves our community well. But we can talk about that in a second. So, yeah, I unfortunately lost by a very, very narrow margin, pretty much due to redistricting. But what I don't think people realize about this seat is, even though we lost by 522 votes, yes, I'm counting, this was a very hard seat. It was the most competitive seat in the state. We lost in a district by 522 votes that Biden won by 16.3 points. My chief of staff said it best. The 16 was easy. It was a 0.3 that got us.
Yeah.
But it shows that Republican conservative values can win, and even very deep blue seats, because this is not by any means an easy seat.
No.
And when you represent the people, when you represent your community, there's people listen, and when people know you, they listen. So really tough seat. In terms of my opponent, she's going to have 2 years to convince the other half of our community, because really, you look at this, it was almost a 50-50 split in terms of the vote.
No doubt.
And my hope is that she builds a relationship with the other 50% to address, the out-of-control homeless crisis that has to deal with mental health, that has to deal with a growing drug problem. I hope that she'll address the rise in crime. There is a statewide nonprofit organization that does polling across California, and they just released a recent survey that said that 63% of Californians feel like they're vulnerable to have a crime committed against them in this. That's really high.
Yeah.
Public safety is a priority. It's something that I'm actually continuing to look forward to working on. I hope that she can focus on those issues.
Yeah, I hope so too. And obviously, I don't share her political values, but at the same time, commanded to pray for our elected officials, and so I do that. Tell us a little bit about your testimony, Suzette. When I first met you back at late 2019, early 2020, I believe, and you probably still are, attending Shepherd's perhaps. Give us a little bit of your testimony of how you came to faith in Christ, and just share with the listeners that journey to Christ.
Yeah. So I was really fortunate to have had very strong Christian mentors in my life since before I was born. My grandmother was a huge influence on my life, my family's life, and our Christianity and faith. She was actually born in Bakersfield, California. So my family...
Can any good thing come out of Bakersfield?
A lot of good things, like the
Like
Speaker of the House and my
too.
grandmother. My good friend now, Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House. Great thing that came out of Bakersfield. But my family came to Kern County in Bakersfield at the turn of last century, 1911, 1917. Wow. My grandmother was born there. Her family was Catholic, and she discovered a relationship with the Lord when she was 15 years old. And she left the Catholic Church, and her father was very upset about that. She left it to become born again in the Foursquare Church, so a very conservative church.
Yep.
And her father actually beat her because he thought she would be going to hell for leaving Catholicism.
Sure.
My grandmother was one of 11 sisters.
Wow.
And
they had no TV back then.
No TV. Yeah. And they worked on farms, so you need a lot of, nimble hands for that, apparently.
Sure.
So my grandmother actually slowly converted all of her 11 sisters to be born again into the church. And from my grandmother's step in faith, we have pastors all over the U.S. and even Mexico that came from our big Bakersfield family. And really cool story is my grandfather, who is now going to be like 95 years old, found the Lord as well through a pastor in the San Fernando Valley that is my cousin from Bakersfield. So who knew that it would come full circle with even my family and my grandfather from my dad's mother. So grew up in the church. I have had, I think like every person, a fluctuating relationship with the Lord. And, I lean into him for everything in all of my decisions. Like when we decided we were going to run for some assembly, we prayed about it. I think that the most difficult time in my life, though, is when I have been closest to God, and really what gave me the fortitude to decide with my family that I was going to run for office. So in 2018, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And my mom has also been a very influential person in my life when it comes to faith. She was a deacon in our church. We grew up in the Sylmar Free Methodist Church, and I had attended that church for like 25 years before I started going to Shepherd. My mom was a deacon in the church, decided to open, after she retired from LAUSD, decided to open a faith-based preschool to serve God's littlest children and ensure that they would have a foundation in Christ that could get them through all of life's trials and tribulations. So in 2018, mom was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I was a new mom of a then, 15-month-old little girl. I had just went through those beginning phases of life when you're having a baby and everything is about tiny toes, new life, being a new mom, and then turned around and had to deal with the other spectrum of life and my mom's journey with death. And let me just tell you, I prayed every day with mom for a miracle, for God to intervene with her illness. And sometimes God has other plans. But what he gave me during, she was diagnosed in May 8th, 2018 and passed away July 31st, 2018. Really, really fast, ugly death. But let me just tell you, God gave me so much fortitude to deal with that journey as a new mom, to be the strength that I needed to be for my mom, for my dad, and kind of taught me that if you can get through that, through making end-of-life decisions with your mom, for your mom, while you're a new mom, if you can get through that with God's grace, you can do anything, including run for the state assembly in a state that is not friendly to Christians, yet alone conservatives.
Not at all. In fact, as you were sharing that, I was thinking a little bit about my past. 4 years ago, in February, a couple months ago, I lost my dad, and he was diagnosed in October of 2018 with 4th-stage cancer, lung cancer, and died February of 2019. So it was very fast. And if it wasn't for, really, to be honest with you, it was probably a grace in a lot of ways that he was able to go as quickly as he did. However, I don't have the same comfort in my heart about his conversion as perhaps you would with your mother, because he was a redneck from Tennessee and, grew up around, kind of a Pentecostal background. But wasn't terribly certain about his conversion to Christ. I always used to tell him, I says, Dad, you're going to have to make your own decision for the Lord Jesus Christ. You're not going to go on your son's coattails. You're going to have to come to Christ on your own. But as you were sharing that, I thought to myself, wow, we kind of have the similar path there, just with your mom as opposed to my dad. But how do you think that kind of? It's amazing how in a tragedy like we can bring up Romans 8:28, right? For all things work together for good. Even a tragedy in your life or my life can work out for your good if God's in the midst of it and you're still able to push through all that. And one life was ended, another life came, your daughter, and then you ended up, a year later winning the assembly seat.
Yeah. So, as my mom's passing has become, further and further away, you sometimes forget certain moments and certain things that happen because you're not living in I'm not living in those 4 months every day like I was then. Yeah. And even, 4 months after that. And now it's, going to be 5 years. I remember when mom was sick that I mentioned we prayed every day. And every single day we were praying for a miracle. And after mom passed, in like 2-3 weeks, we had her funeral. And I was writing her eulogy, and I was thinking, every day we prayed for a miracle. And as I looked back, every day we got a miracle. Whether it was a nurse that was a Christian that prayed with mom when we weren't there for a couple of hours, or a new doctor that could help us with her pain breakthroughs. Every single day, God gave us a miracle. Yeah. My brother being able to come out at a time where it was a 2-week span where I was just having a tough time. I couldn't handle it. When you're caring for somebody one is your mother, but two needs like 24/7 care. I was mom's full-time caregiver.
Sure.
It's a really heavy burden to deal with.
Yeah.
My brother came out for 2 weeks and I needed that. And as I looked at how God intervenes in situations that are most difficult, I realized you're praying for a miracle, but you got to be open to the miracle that he's going to give you.
Yeah.
So once I decided I was going to run for state assembly, once I won, which was also kind of a miracle to some extent.
Sure.
We won in the primary. There were 5 Democrats that decided to run for the seat, 2 Republicans, and the Democrats shut themselves out.
They did.
Ended up on a Republican race, and we won in November. That I've also kind of taken with me and took with me to the state assembly is even when there were some really bad bills that were passing, when I didn't think my bills were going to get it past committee, there was those little miracles that continue to happen. So even when the world seems like it's against you in the state legislature, there were 80 assembly members. 61 of them are Democrat, 19 of them were Republican when I was there. And we could pass some good stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, again, it's God delivering on his little promises and his little miracles.
Would you say that was definitely, you were in the minority?
Yeah, one of 19 Republicans, definitely in the minority.
Yeah, no doubt about that. We're talking to formerly Assemblywoman Suzette Valladares, and she has a future in politics. We'll talk about that when we get back here. We're also going to talk a little bit about how does an Assemblywoman who has future aspirations, how does she balance being a mom, being a wife, and all that, at the same time representing a constituency here in California? So when we get back on Politics in the Pulpit, we'll deal with that topic, and we'll see what Suzette has to say. We'll catch you in just a few moments. All right, we're back here on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. If you're just joining us, we are joined in studio today with former Assemblywoman Suzette Valladares, who was elected back in November of 2020 for the then 38th District, which now, of course, is the redrawn, newly 40th District, represented by Pilar Schiavo. And we talked a little bit about how Suzette lost by the narrowest of margins, but I just found out that Suzette was born and raised in Bakersfield, California, which is an interesting part of California, kind of like Fresno. But the good thing is Suzette is still here in California, but a lot of good, great Californians have left our state. As a pastor, I have seen so many good congregants that are also good voters leave my own congregation for states like Idaho, Arizona, which is kind of a purple state now, Florida, and a few other states, Wyoming. Why do you think a state with such, beautiful resources? In the morning you could be surfing, in the afternoon you could be skiing, somewhere in the middle you could be in the desert. This state offers everything. The climate is perfect wherever you want to go. You can be in the middle of the snow. You can be in the subterranean desert. You can be at the beaches. Why do you think this state is bleeding so many people? And go ahead, state the obvious.
Well, I'll make a tiny correction. My father and my grandparents moved to LA County in the 50s. So I was actually born and raised Valley girl.
Oh, okay.
I still have a huge family in Bakersfield.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know. Totally. So when I have the like at the end of my sentence, and what sounds like a question,
it's
but
Valley
is
girl
a statement,
thing.
it's totally a Valley girl thing. So I actually a big part of the reason I decided that I was going to run for state assembly is because my family started leaving the state. Mm-hmm. Grandmother, one of 11 daughters. Dad, one of 6. Mom, one of 6. My family, if you didn't go to the, family barbecue, you're in trouble. Very much, you got to be there, your family. You're at every, you're at Sunday church, you're at birthdays, you're at Christmas, you're at Easter, or you're in trouble.
Yeah.
My family just decided, my uncle moved to Colorado about 10 years ago. My brother moved to Virginia, which was supposed to be temporary. They're not coming back. It's been 6 years. My brother-in-law moved to Texas. My other brother-in-law just last year moved to South Dakota. My family, who has been in this state for more than 100 years, is leaving the state. Well, why are they leaving the state? Because it's too expensive to live here. Young families can't afford to buy a home. They can't afford, their gas bill in January.
Yeah, we could talk about that. I could tell you how much mine was.
I won't tell you how much mine was. It was pretty bad. The price of everything in California is extremely high versus other states. And it's actually because of government, because of the policies and the laws that are coming out of Sacramento that make the cost of living just too darn high here and make the cost of doing business too darn high. It's hard for businesses to recruit qualified employees because they can't afford to buy a house or live in the community they're going to work in. So that is one of the key reasons people are leaving this state. But there's also a lot of other reasons. Crime is through the roof. Homelessness is running rampant. 172,000 people are homeless in California. And lastly, what I see, and maybe this is just through my lens of being a young mom, is we have no faith in the education system. Especially after COVID, we're seeing that less than 50% of kids in our TK through 12 education system can read or do math. That's our future. If we don't have kids graduating high school that can't read or do math, guess what? We're in a lot of trouble. And I think we've lost 700,000 people in California over the last 2 years. We lost one congressional seat because for the first time in California's history, for the very first time, our growth has come to a standstill. And which is why we lost a congressional seat last cycle as well.
And obviously all of those negatives tend to be resume enhancements for the Democrats, because obviously, there's this talk of Gavin wanting to run, even though he's already said he's not, but we already know that means no means yes, and yes means no, and all that kind of stuff. But it's amazing how Mr. Cavalier, Gavin Newsom, Governor Hairjo, whatever you want to call him, would actually think that he could somehow do to the nation what he's done to California. But unfortunately, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to people out there, but there's just enough stupid people out there that will say, yeah, he looks good, I think I'll vote for him.
That is a big fear for me, because if we look at, California is number one in all the wrong places, right? Crime, public safety, cost of living, and that comes from Sacramento policies and Governor Newsom's political party, and they seem to just want to double down. I mean, look at our state,
it's
right?
Insanity.
They want to double down on it by taking that national. I mean, that's scary. You know what's scarier is that the state is moving further and further left. I don't know if you realize this, but I even hear from that average Democrat voter that they don't recognize their party. It's not the party of JFK. But the DSA, the Democrat Socialist of America, have overtook the Democrat Party here in California, and they're starting to do across the state, and they're organized. And this is scary. Two things here. One, there are 3 city council members on Los Angeles City Council that are socialists. They're not Democrats. They are DSA candidates. They are organized. There was an article that I read that was a pro-socialist article that said that the road to socialism runs through California.
Oh, that's great.
We're seeing that in all of the policies at the city level, at the state level, and Newsom is doubling down on those policies, and we got to stop it here. So the rest of the nation, if you're listening to Pastor Cook's show, if you're in Florida, I don't know if we got to broadcast this further.
Not quite,
but
you gotta, one of these days we will.
You got to spend money in California to stop the road to socialism.
Yeah. Well, it is kind of brazen here in California. I mean, you can, 10, 15 years ago, you'd have been a little more discreet about saying you're a socialist, or you call yourself a democratic socialist, as Bernie likes to say, which kind of, again, is a discreet way of calling yourself a socialist. But the fact is, it seems to me, at least, as just an onlooker, that what California is attempting to do is basically squeeze the middle class out, and you're either going to be really rich or really poor, and there really is no middle class, which of course sounds like a communist country in many ways, because that's essentially what communism is. You're either really rich, you're affluent, or you're very poor, and you're being taken care of by whatever the state. And it seems like that's exactly what is happening here in a microcosm. And then if Gavin has his way, or if the party has its way, exporting that across nationally.
Right. Well, we're seeing here too, though, the policies that are coming out of the majority party in Sacramento is chaos, right? When you look at and growing government and having government intervene more in your life, but not actually solving any problems. Let's look at public safety. Let's look at, Prop 47, Prop 57, which were propositions that were sold to the voter as, let's, approve rainbows and puppy dogs. And really, though, they were about
unicorns.
And unicorns. Yeah. Yes, unicorns, very important. It was really about starting the decriminalization of everything. And the hypocrisy is just so glaring. You have the left, Governor Newsom, saying that they want to end gun violence. Well, there was a bill that was presented in the state assembly last week that would have helped to end violent gun violence by holding criminals accountable. So the bill, really common sense bill, so we already know it's not going to pass public safety, right?
Oh, of course not.
So the bill said that if you use a firearm in a violent crime, rape, murder, lewd acts with a child, there would be enhancements on that crime and mandatory prison time. These are the people we need to keep off the streets.
Sure.
These are people that should not be on the streets and for committing the most grotesque crimes with a firearm. They shot it down. There's no accountability, and the bills are not common sense, and they're just empowering criminals. And at the end of the day, they're making criminals victims and criminalizing victims.
Yeah.
It's about chaos, and let me just tell you, it's working.
Yeah, that is obviously the solution for the Democratic Party, is that, chaos seems to breed the success of the party. Let me ask you this question. Let's kind of stop talking about the Democrats, because I'm getting a headache right now. How does an assemblywoman, former assemblywoman, how did you balance being mom, being a wife, and at the same time representing your constituency?
With an amazing husband.
Yes.
Honestly, it takes a village, and I think as parents...
Was that a reference to a Hillary Clinton book?
No, because I'm talking about my good Christian village.
Oh, okay, good. All right, good.
Don't let her own that phrase.
I was going to say, don't come in here with a pantsuits either.
Don't let her own that. I'm wearing jeans because I'm... don't let her own that phrase. I hate when they do that. It takes a village, and meaning my dad has been very helpful. My in-laws have been very helpful. My husband is very helpful. And I think with parents, you're often asked, how do you do it all? Well, you just do it. But I would say, my husband is huge. He's Mr. Mom during the week. A routine has been important. Really prioritizing my family on Sundays, whether it's going to church or spending, good quality time, and also doing the laundry and all of the basics. Planning a lot, preparing a lot.
Assemblywomen do laundry?
I do laundry. I do the dishes. I'm a normal person.
You don't have a maid?
No, I do not have a maid. My husband is very, he doesn't want anybody coming into his house that he doesn't know, so we do it all. That's
probably good.
So, sorry, Shane, I'm going to probably get in trouble for telling everyone that.
Well, because, the inference in most people's minds is, Republicans are, the rich fat cats, and, we're the guys that, we employ all the Molly maids to keep our houses clean. But last time I checked, my wife and I are the ones that clean the house, so... And occasionally my kids, when I can get them to clean the house, but they're really good at dirtying it. They're really good at that. But yeah, it's unfortunate. So that is the impression that most people in California have of Republicans, that, a bunch of rich fat cats, white. Of course, you're not white, you're a Latina. How would Suzette Martinez Valladares, a Latina conservative, how would you define constitutional conservatism in general? And then once you define it, how do you make that appeal across the board?
Yeah. Well, to back up a little bit there, I think it's really interesting that the left has really tried to create these boxes for people. Mm-hmm. So whether it's that Republicans are old rich white guys that don't do their own laundry, or that you're Latino, you're Latina, you're young, you're a woman, you're a Democrat,
and you're not Latinx though.
No, don't get me started.
Oh, did I do that? Oh, sorry.
Don't do it. I am not a Latinx.
Okay, very good. Which I think is a cat, but anyway, go ahead.
Right, might be right. They've done a really good job at putting people in boxes, and as I've gotten older, I've been able to identify those falsehoods. Mm-hmm. One. And two, it's actually the opposite, right? So in California, it's the rich liberal elites who control our government and who make it harder and harder for the average working class individual to get by. Mm-hmm. And so those 700,000 people that have left, they can thank the wealthy liberal elites for that. Yeah. When I knew I was a conservative when I was about 16, 17 years old. And registered as a Republican when I was 18 years old. And I tell this, story of going to see Al Gore speak at Fairfax High when I was in high school. And, pretty much everything he said, I left that speech and that, presidential rally, he was running for president. And I was like, I don't agree with any of that. What's this Republican Party, really about? Sure. And it's the party of the working class. It's the party that says that if you work hard enough, you can accomplish anything. And I've lived my life by those very same values. My parents or family came here 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. I was a sitting assemblywoman. Yeah. That came from LAUSD school system, which wasn't the best. Yeah. But I worked hard, and everything I've done, whether it's running a preschool, being an executive director at my organization now, I give it my all because that's the American dream. Yeah. That's a California dream that my parents came here for. I think it's amazing to blow up this narrative. And let me just tell you, the Democrats are afraid. They're like, it's a Latina, Republican. Oh no. So I was last week, I was honored for being, one of a former Republican Latina legislator. There are 5 sitting Latino Republicans in the California legislature now, and we're growing. And I know in California, the Latino community, whether it's the Latino faith community, the hardworking community, the community that wants their child to have a quality education, they're awakening, and I think that they're ready. They're ready to say, hey, the Democrats have been failing our community. Let's look at this Republican Party. And and not just for Latinos, across the board, families are seeing this.
I agree with that totally, and I'm really hoping from your mouth to God's ears that will inevitably occur here in our state. When we come back here on Politics in the Pulpit, we're going to talk a little bit about what is in the future for Suzette Martinez Valladares and exactly where in the state will she fit? So we'll talk about that when we get back here on Politics in the Pulpit, here on your hometown station. We'll catch you in a minute. All right, we're back here on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. If you're just joining us, shame on you. You should have been here an hour ago, but we're coming to the end of the program. But we have with us in studio today Republican former Assemblywoman Suzette Valladares. And of course, Suzette, I said former, but there is a future to the former. So tell us a little bit about your future, your announcement here as of the last week or so, and you are seeking what?
So I have announced that I am formally seeking to represent the 23rd Senate District in the California legislature. So Senator Wilk, who has been an amazing conservative supporter and mentor.
Is that Got Wilk?
Got Wilk,
yeah,
yes.
Okay.
We have had Wilk. Got Wilk for almost going on 12 years now in the state legislature. So he unfortunately terms out of office. Mm-hmm. And, with lots of prayer and conversation with my family and with Senator Wilk, we've decided that we're in it. So
You're in it to win it.
We're in it to win it. And we're going to win it by more than 523 votes.
Oh, Lord willing.
And so the election the primary will take place in March of 2024, so less than a year from now.
Yeah, we're getting close.
And the primary, obviously, in November. I'm really excited. I feel like I have unfinished business to do, particularly in fighting for kids, fighting for education, fighting so that the average family doesn't have to struggle so hard to make ends meet. And really ensuring that we handle the mental health and fentanyl crisis that really go hand in hand, including with homelessness. So in my first year in the legislature, there was one particular bill that was the hardest bill for me to watch pass. And it was a Scott Wiener bill, Senator Scott Wiener bill. That
I will not make fun of his name.
And I giggle like a 5-year-old. So he had passed a bill that is now law that essentially legalizes loitering with the intent to commit prostitution. And
again, this comes from a guy named Wiener.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He may or may not have an agenda. So when I spoke against that bill on the floor, it was out of a place for love for kids.
Yeah.
And it was out of a place of having lots of friends that are in law enforcement, of having visited Zoe International, which intervenes and stops human and sex trafficking, and knowing that bill was going to lock away a tool that law enforcement used to intervene and stop human trafficking.
Wow.
And as I hit that no button and got up and spoke against that bill, it, like, my heart, my soul, my stomach just sunk because I knew what the implications of that bill were going to be.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that bill is now law, and we're seeing a rise in human trafficking. San Diego, they had a bust where the youngest age of one of the trafficked girls was 13 years old.
Wow.
And they attribute it to this bill. And I feel like I have unfinished business to do, and would be excited to have would be honored to have our community support in sending me back to the legislature.
Absolutely. Provide context for what Wilkes' seat covers in terms of the district.
Yeah, so the 23rd Assembly District includes all of Santa Clarita, and it's newly numbered. So after redistricting, Senator Wilkes' district was 21. We're now 23. It is Santa Clarita, the Antelope Valley, Lancaster, Palmdale, and parts of the San Bernardino County, which are Hesperia, Adelanto, Victorville. So we go all the way up to Kern County line as well.
Wow.
A million people in the district.
Wow. And with Scott Wilkes' endorsement, who do you think will be your main primary opponents going into the end of this year?
So right now, we know that there's not really another interested Republican, so we think that I've pretty much shored up that support, and I have a lot of other Republican support from across the district. Senator Wilk just happens to be one of them, but the entire Republican Senate caucus, including Assembly Leader Brian Jones, has endorsed me. We're getting a lot of support amongst the Republican Party. Senator Wilk's former opponent, Mr. Mueller.
Kip.
He wants me to bring the jingle back. He told me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. He's running on the Democrat side.
Oh, well, he almost unseated Wilk, but thankfully Wilk pulled it out there in the end, so we're thankful for that. If folks want to support you, if folks want to get on board, do some walk the neighborhoods, whatever the case might be, how would they get a hold of Suzette Valladares?
Yeah, I talk about the
Valladares.
Three Valladares, right? Ooh, Valladares the Valladares V's. You got to get out and vote.
Yeah.
You got to volunteer, and you gotta I can't find and you gotta donate.
Okay, well, that's okay. Yeah. We'll stick with it. VVD.
Yeah. So you can go to my website at SuzetteValladares.com. You can sign up to make a contribution. You can volunteer, and obviously get your friends and family to vote. This is going to be the top most competitive race in the state Senate this cycle, 2024. It's not going to be easy. So if you care what's going on in our community, in our state, you got to get involved. Go to SuzetteValladares.com. You can follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. And yes, don't judge me. I have a TikTok. You can go to my TikTok too.
Oh, no. China is obviously spying on you.
I don't got much to hide, so.
Yeah, well. I want to ask this one last question. It's a little bit of a soft spot, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Obviously, abortion was put on the ballot back in November. We know what happened with that ballot measure. In hindsight, do you still stand by that vote, Suzette, or do you regret that vote?
It wasn't an easy vote for me. Mm-hmm. And, I had conversations with you and other faith leaders around the community. I prayed about it. I prayed about it a lot. And I just kind of came to this conclusion that it wasn't going to be a political decision, that I needed it to sit well with my heart and how I view this issue.
Sure.
And I am someone who believes that rape, incest, life of the mother should be exceptions for access to abortion. And the constitutional amendment was very broad, and people can have arguments about what it does. I think we're going to continue to have arguments about what it does because it's very, very, very broad.
Yeah.
I stand by my reasoning, and I also stand by that I will continue to fight for the unborn. And I was a very strong voice in opposing late-term abortion and opposing not prosecuting individuals that were unlicensed performing abortions. Things like that we have got to fight vehemently against, and I am committed to continuing to do that.
Well, Suzette Valladares, we're so glad that you were able to come in studio today to talk to me and to talk to potential voters as well. And, of course, the organization that you are currently working for, one more time, go ahead and give a shout-out to that.
Yeah, LAPD Devonshire PALS.
Okay, LAPD Devonshire PALS. This is Pastor Cook saying thank you for listening into Politics in the Pulpit. Hopefully you'll tune in next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel, as I don't even know who we have on next week, but I'm sure it'll be someone fun. But this is Pastor Jerry Cook over and out here on your hometown station. Take care.